When we talk about this migration from manual to digital HR, many leaders, many organizations are plagued with challenges. I've heard many of them tell me that, we want to change this, but we are stuck. So let me share with you what typically are challenges that most people are confronted with. One is this entire issue about security. Will my data be secure? If everything is going to be digital, what if someone hacks? What if a virus were to corrupt? And so on and so forth. What if I put it in the cloud? Is it safe? Some of these are legitimate concerns because the reality of technology hacking, the reality of newer viruses is here to stay. But let's look at it positively. There will always be the worry. There will always be the naysayers. There will always be a reason to say, oh, this is not going to work. And that's how the world has changed in all these years, over centuries. There were always a set of naysayers. But I always believe the infraction of a law is no reason for its annulment. Similarly, therefore, because there could be theoretically security issues, not to attempt, I think it is going to be foolhardy. Because let's be honest, as new viruses and as new hackers get active, so also the security and defense mechanisms. But it is a challenge, but there is also a slew of solutions which ensure security. The other big question people ask is, my CEO or the CFOs are asking questions on ROI. I think this is about influencing both with data and influencing with philosophy. I think HR is not always about instant noodles. It is really about trying to explain the new culture. It is all about making a new workplace. And if you start adding all the dimensions of what a new agile, efficient, responsive, high experience workplace delivers, and therefore enables far better decision making and therefore more productive organizations, answering a small ROI investment on technology to enable HR is not really a big debate. It is just about how will you make sure you put your arguments together and comprehensively. The third big issue of change that I hear from a lot of people is about resistance to change. And this can come from different people. It can come from sometimes CIOs, the technology guardians of companies. Sometimes these are turf issues because as digitization has come in, a lot of decision-making bias has moved away from technology ownership to function ownership, including in HR. But it's possible, but it's all about making sure that you explain and articulate the joint partnership rather than the resistance. Leadership. Not many leaders are tech-savvy yet. And even if they are, they still prefer the paper and the pen. And therefore this entire world, a new world, especially in old age economy companies, is a resistance. And I think it's again about explaining to people the value of digitization, demonstrating the speed and impact of digitization, the logic of how changing demographics within the company and possibly of your clients expects you to move to a different world. But there are people who feel a little cagey about the change. And of course, employees. Many organizations today are living with multi-generational categories of employees. So at one level, you'll have millennials who will not accept a world beyond digital. But you'll also have many people who started their careers 30 years back, 35 years back. And they are still struggling with this entire thing, including their own impressions on job security and therefore job anxiety. So resistance to anything new is natural and it can stop change. But the solution is how do you influence the reality of the world that we exist in. And finally, the reason that stops change is what I call lack of skills. We just don't have the skills. And because we don't have skills, the natural response to a new world is sabotage it. Now, is it a big deal? My father learned everything about using the computer and using the smartphone after retiring after 37 years in the civil service, which historically has been a paper and pen reality. And he learnt it. And he learnt it almost 20 years back. And I therefore believe it's all about orientation. It is all about how do organizations, how do leaders, how do HR handhold people to go through this experience. Today, a lot of digital work is intuitive. It is not about coding and programming. And therefore, lack of skills is more in the mind than in the substance. But these are all issues that impact change efforts and could be constraints to someone. My counsel is don't give up, don't surrender, influence this change. I had once written a tweet, if we want to win, we need to first believe we can, all skeptics notwithstanding. It is not enough, but it is non-negotiable. And I think this is really this entire nuance of change management in the context of the new digital world. So what can you do to accelerate change? Essentially 4 things. Shape the landscape. Move from technology in isolation to helping people see technology as a means to a purpose. The CEOs have their own role to play, the CHROs have their own role to play. But ultimately it is about how will you shape and influence the landscape. And I think this is very, very important. How do you communicate? How do you measure success? How do you share a vision of transformation? How do you ensure that this becomes an experience which is positive, which gets gamified, employees experience it in the right way? And at the end of the day, of course, you need to ensure that you get the maximum value for the buck that you spend. The second thing that one must do, and we don't do that well enough, is to prepare proactively. It's a big shift from capturing just pure operational data, and many companies are not even there, to actually capturing data as curated information. If you just dump data, it is actually of no value add. But you can curate data to get insights, to get analytics which can almost help you predict outcomes and therefore help you be very sharp in your decision making. But this is a big mindset shift for leaders and companies. It's about data-driven practice. It's about simplification. It's about transparency. And I think CEOs have to walk the talk. They've got to lead it from the front. And I think HR in its own area has to define data which adds meaning. What insights lead to business decisions? Focus there. And of course, work with leadership in influencing this entire absorption. Work through all the change management challenges. But it's all about preparing proactively. The third suggestion that I have about accelerating this change is think big and think disruptive. I believe the world of incremental changes and advances is dead. The world will actually subsume you many times over before that. And I strongly believe bring in disruptive technology. It collapses time cycles. You don't need today to do things incrementally. You can actually crunch timelines. You can go from nothing to right at the top. And CEOs need to actually be the sponsors of this disruptive technology. Even if you fail quick, fail fast, and recover. But I think this is very, very key. And I think from an HR perspective, a CHRO perspective, try and make sure that things are available to people to do on their smartphones. People are not going to be sitting on their desktops and just logging away their hours anymore. Help people assimilate, absorb, accept this as something which makes their lives easier. And in that process, help to prepare the company for disruption. Because at the end of the day, transforming companies is one of your biggest deliverables in contemporary times. And the last suggestion, if I may, to accelerate change toward a digital HR reality is to recognize people are the key. Again and again. It's not just about buying technology. It is about ensuring that starting from the leadership, people accept digital transformations and transitions. CEOs particularly can talk about it. It's all about repeating the vision, making sure that people understand the vision, buy into the vision. And most importantly, lead digital by example. People do not just want to believe what is being told to them. They like to see things. So if CEOs and the senior leadership, if the CHROs, they are able to actually role model this, it's good for the brand and it is good for business. It is agile, it is speedier, it is quicker. And there are some very good examples of chief executives who do this. There are very lousy examples of chief executives who still don't do this. There are great examples of CHROs who do it. There are lousy examples of HR managers who don't do it. But I think if it is done right and role modeled right, people are very keen to absorb and follow practices and behaviors of senior leadership. So these are the 4 changes that I believe can accelerate transitions of companies from a manual HR reality to a digital HR reality.